Hey everybody, and welcome to the Solidity Insurance Group team call. My name's Marisa Maggio, and today is February 27th of 2025. So just about to wrap up the month of February, and super excited to be out here right now in Birmingham, Alabama for a lock-in that's been absolutely amazing this last day and a half, and really excited to wrap it up strong after this call as well. We do have a special guest on with us today, Trey Honeycutt. Now, Trey's somebody, guys, that you may be like, oh, we've heard from Trey before, but like Trey's like a fountain. Like he has so many different things. And I think the reason for that is because Trey's pretty much experienced so many different levels of this business. And guys, that's invaluable, right? Like just like the time here in this lock-in is invaluable, so is the information that Trey's going to kind of share with us today and walk through. So it's like if you don't have a notebook, right now is the time to grab a pen and paper. And also, if you haven't been to a lock-in, guys, like right now is the time to decide you're going to at least one this year, because I think it just helps. And what I've seen over the last day and a half is like, it's kind of uncomfortable if you're just kind of sitting there, right? Like if you're sitting there doing nothing, it's really uncomfortable. But if you're sitting there working and doing the best you can, even if you're getting objections, rebuttals, no's, whatever, you're getting feedback. And that's exciting. So, but without further ado, Trey, thank you so much for putting this amazing event together. And thank you for being on with us today. How are you doing, Trey?
I'm doing phenomenal. This event has been, it has been pretty amazing actually. Um, I haven't been to Birmingham only a couple times in my life, but this is definitely the best trip I've ever had to Birmingham. So, thanks for having me on. I just want to get on real quick and just and share a few things specifically for new agents. First of all, um, I can't stress enough how much the fundamental fact of this being the people business, we overlook that so much. We get so caught up in the technology and the how to and the systems that we forget the most important thing in this business is people. And when you come to something like this, you realize um, more than ever for me that this hasn't changed. Like for a long time, if I'm being completely transparent, I got confused over the transition from in-home to telesales. And then once I started doing these types of things and getting around people in this environment, I realized how much of this hasn't changed. It's still the same thing. It's just we're selling insurance over the phone instead of in someone's home. And the people that want to buy the insurance, as long as it's structured properly and it makes sense and you're overcoming objections in advance, they're going to purchase it from you. Everybody has a different style. And the way the scripts and things are structured, if you can just buy into that and follow it and you do it long enough, you'll get good enough that it'll start to work. And that's always going to be that way. Um, when this doesn't work is the same reason why it didn't work 10 years ago before we did it on the telephone. And it's because you get in your head, you think a lot, you don't get around people, you isolate, you ruminate over all the things that could go wrong instead of thinking about all the things that could go right. You're afraid to invest money. You start thinking things to yourself like, well, maybe the leads don't work. Did they give me a bad batch because I did a good week last week? Like somebody actually brought that up to me today. They said, hey, like, there's no way they could give me like bad leads this week because they know I killed it last week, right? And I go, how could they do that? Like they're just leads. Like we don't know. Like nobody's talked to these people yet. Like how do we know that Bob has $1,000 expendable income and Mark is negative $250 in bank account? We don't have a clue. They're not sales, they're leads. Um, but it's reminded me so much that especially when you're new, everybody goes through the same stuff in this business. Like everybody's gone through the same thing. It's just, and you will go through the same stuff. There's only so many different obstacles. Now, the order you go through them in and which obstacle you face first, I don't have any control over what that is. But I can tell you at a certain point, everybody's experienced the same thing. We all experience self-doubt. We all experience whether or not we think it's going to work. We all experience, making a huge sale that gets declined. We all experience making a huge sale that goes through and we get paid, we get a charge back. We've all experienced hiring an agent that doesn't answer our call ever again. It doesn't show up. We've all experienced the person that asks a million questions, never makes a phone call. Like we've all gone through the same stuff. So the remedy for that is to get around people. The one thing that people think that they want to get away from is actually the thing they need the most, and that's the community of it. So that's why I'm so excited about these lock-ins. I've learned a ton about the lock-ins, but I've learned a ton by going to lock-ins. And our goal, my goal from coast to coast down is 25 lock-ins in the year 2025. And we've done, this is the fourth one. This is the fourth one I've been to. I got 21 more to do. So the next one is going to be Vegas. The one after that is going to be Orlando. We got one coming up in San Antonio, Texas in April. I'm probably going to do one in North Carolina in May. Probably coming back here in June. I'm probably going to do two in California in October, and I'll keep y'all posted when all those dates are. Um, but I think that's what I wanted to start off by saying is just how crucial it is to get around other people, how to not be isolated, how to not be afraid to unmute, how to not be afraid of the coaching, of what people might say if you said something wrong. We've all said something wrong. The cheat code of this business, the thing that when this happens for you, there's a point where you realize that there are people on the other line, on the other side of the phone, that you could mess it up 150 times and they'll still buy it. Like, if you just understood that, this business becomes a whole lot easier because you stop wrestling the ones that they ain't gonna buy it anyway. And people are too hard on themselves. They start asking themselves questions like, well, what did I do wrong and how can I improve? And I understand the thirst and hunger for constant improvement. I get that. That's a strength, but it's also a weakness because you're always searching for the next big piece of knowledge that's going to get you over the hump. And there's not a next big piece of knowledge. It's just the big deal is all the little deals strung together. That's how it works. Everybody's looking for the big deal. It's not the big deal. It's all the little deals strung together. It's like a flywheel. You guys know what a flywheel is? Like when you spin it, and it takes a lot of energy to spin it, but eventually it's spinning fast enough that you don't have to spin it anymore. It's spinning you. That's a flywheel. That's how this business works. It takes a lot of energy to get it to move, but eventually it's moving so fast that you're no longer moving it, it's moving you. And so, what I try to get people to understand, and this has been true since the beginning, if you're in a state of overwhelmed confusion and anxiety because you're working so hard, just stay that way for another 90 days. Like, that literally heals every problem that you'll ever experience in the business. What most people do is they get to a state of overwhelm and I don't know what to do and I'm confused and I have anxiety and I can't keep up. And they slow down to try to get all their ducks in a row and get this beautiful system where it looks beautiful on the plate and there's no problems. If you want to figure out how to break through to the other side of this business, just stay in the place where you can't keep up, you're confused, and everything's falling apart. And just do that longer. And if, some of y'all, this makes sense too. Like, let me give you a legitimate application. You don't quite know how to handle every single objection. You don't quite know what to say on the phone script, but you dial the heck out of the leads like you know it all. And when somebody says no or they hang up on you, you don't get their social, you don't get their bank account, or they back out at the last minute, or they have an issue with a uh, with the freaking application, and they get angry and they get off the phone because they can't figure out how to send a text code or read one, or they can't figure out a certain carrier's 17 things that they got to check and pop-ups before they can do a text code. Like, when you're running into those problems, just run into those problems more often. Fail faster. That's the answer. Like, double your rate of failure. That is the answer. If the leads aren't working, buy 3 times as many. And I know because I've heard that from other people. And I know that that doesn't always make sense because you want to quantify it. You want to say, okay, if I got 50 leads, I made 3 sales. Well, if I get 200 leads, that means I'll make 12 sales. And it's not that way. It's economy of scale. It's not that way. It doesn't, it's not quantifiable. If you get the 200 leads, you probably make 20 sales. Why? I don't know why. I actually don't have an answer to this, but I have done it long enough that I've seen it work long enough and enough times that it always works. You can't outwork the numbers and the numbers can't outwork you. Now, what you can do is you can think a lot about doing the work and feel like you're working and feel the stress of the work and the all the things that go along with it, but not actually be doing anything. Like somebody said yesterday, and it's interesting. Maurice in the lead with Lockett. Heather's close second. She's close. They both worked the whole time. Rami might be second right now. But what's interesting about that is somebody said who's brand new, who's been here the whole time. He goes, yeah, Maurice's in the lead. And yesterday, like she didn't have any conversations with anyone except the people on the phone to buy insurance. I was like, isn't that something? She actually dialed for 8 straight hours. There's three things we do in this business, and it's all it is. There's three things. We set appointments to talk to people about insurance. We talk to people about insurance, and we recruit people to set appointments and talk to people about insurance. If you spend a majority of your week doing those things, you do that for 40 hours a week, it's impossible for it not to work. I think a lot of times we get this complex of like, I'm going to show my badge of honor, like how much I can outwork everybody else because I do 16 hours. You know, there's a place for that. But for the vast majority of people in this business, let's just figure out a way to do that 40 hours a week. If you do it 40 hours a week and you do it consistently, it is absolutely impossible for it not to work long term. Like it's impossible. But what most people do is they do it 40 hours one week, and then they find a bunch of stuff to spend their time on the next week, and they do it for 10. Then they get a chargeback or two, and then they finally decide to buy new leads. And next week they do 40 hours, and then they get back to where they can breathe again. Because there's this place in this business. Here's what it is. In this business, you go from crisis mode to survival. And that's where people like to bounce around. Like they come to the business in crisis mode. Like they're about to repossess my car. They're about to kick me out of my house. How can I make $12,000 yesterday? I made a bunch of bad decisions. It took me 8 years to get in this position, but I'm going to buy some vet leads and I'm going to fix it in 6 days. It normally doesn't happen that way, right? Like it took you 12 years to be this bad. You can't expect to fix it in a week. That's where people get. So what I see people do is they come in crisis mode. God, the wolves are at the door. I got to make something happen. They work like an animal to get back to survival. Their head's barely above water, and they go, oh my God, I can breathe. And the next thing they know, they're back in crisis mode. What people got to learn how to do is to go from crisis mode to survival and then go a step beyond that to thriving. So your old level of survival is the worst it ever gets. And then there's even a level above that, like ultra thriving. Like I was talking to an agent yesterday and I was like, how much money do you have? Like in the bank. And it's a lot compared to the way it used to be. And I said, what you got to do is you got to convince yourself that that's nothing so that you can get to the next level so that the worst it ever is that little amount, you know, but it's a lot. I'm not diminishing the amount, but when you grow, you realize that really wasn't that much. Like every level has a new devil in this business. And it's that way in life though. Like I had a conversation with someone else where I was like, you get your self-esteem from the work. You don't get your self-esteem from the results. You don't. The results don't make you happy. They come last. They come as a result of all of the process that it takes to become the person that you need to do to make the sacrifices that you need to make long enough that you get the result and you can look back and say, look what I accomplished. Everything is about accomplishment. It's about achievement. It's like, can I do better than I used to do? Am I getting further ahead? Am I making progress? Or am I falling behind? Am I living up to my potential? Or am I sitting on my laurels? And a lot of the depression in life and a lot of the sadness in life, it has nothing to do with money. If you ask any integrity partner, because we all experience something very unique, many of us, and I can't speak for everybody, but many of us would say that sometimes the lowest part of our life is when we had the most money. Because you get to this place where it's like, I can breathe, but you forget what got you there. And not everybody's that way. But most of us experience that to a degree. And it's because it was never really about the result, it was about the process. So that's what this business is. When you show up every day and you do it around people and you get on Zoom and you get to make friends and you set goals and you accomplish those goals and you set a dial goal and you hit your dial goal and you buy leads when it's uncomfortable. Another thing that happens, and I don't know, I'm convinced that in heaven there is a round table of like insurance agents from the Great Depression. who are sitting around having conversations about the struggles that we're having, really having a good time. Because oftentimes in this business, like it's always darkest before the dawn. We call it fourth quarter magic. Like when you run the last appointment, you have a full day of no shows. You call Bob. He set an appointment with you yesterday, and he acts like he doesn't even speak English when you call him the second time. But he had an appointment with you, and he told you he wanted to spend $137 a month. And then you call him, and then he acts like he has no idea who you are. And you go through this for the whole day, and you get down to your last one. It's 9 o'clock at night. You have 2 hours between now and then. You've decided, okay, probably going to throw in the towel. Maybe I'll reschedule Bob. I'm really not feeling it. When you show up and you run Bob, that's a $450 a month premium. It happens like that the majority of the time. So you can't tell me that in heaven there isn't a round table of former insurance agents that are just kind of messing with us to see how strong we are. And I don't know. I don't even know if there was a question, Marisa, and maybe my blood sugar's off. I've been eating too many cake pops, which were actually really good, by the way. Those cake pops were great. But if you had, did I answer anything or did you even ask me anything? I think I just said
Well,
hi.
to be honest, Trey, I think the way that you hit it off was just like, hey, like, let's get back in front of people. First of all, like let's not neglect that piece. And I think you what you just hit on was what I think all of us need to hear. And not just right now, guys. Like today you might be like, hey, well, I killed it today. But I want us all to think back to this call and what Trey just said tomorrow, next week, next month, when you're like, hey, why did last month go so bad for me? And the month before that was so good. Think about what Trey's talking about. It's always a compounding effect. So I think that, Trey, you hit it on the head. Whether you're compounding it in a negative way or you're compounding it in a positive way is up to you, but you get to choose the way that you compound that. And then, Trey, one other thing I do want to ask you, just while we're on here, and I think honestly, like what you just did, I want to like mic drop it, but I'm like, wait, I got one more. Um, Coming out to different states, obviously, Trey, this isn't something that like you have to do it, and like like if not, like I was gonna be like, Trey, like we think that you don't care about us, like because you didn't come out to Alabama, like no, you're doing this. Like, talk to us a little bit about why like this is a goal for you as Coast to Coast doing 25 lock-ins this year, and really what you think that the agents are going to gain out of that specifically. Like, why is that the goal?
I, you know, I just, I really want to see people win because me and Jeray, like I was, you know, I know what it's like to really struggle financially. And it's actually the best thing that ever happened to me because I know what it's like. I know what it's like to be bankrupt. I know what it's like to have them take all your stuff. I know what it's like for everybody to talk shit about you like you're a bad person because you can't pay your bills and you're working and you still can't pay your bills. So when I had an opportunity, because I always worked hard, that's never been an issue. I've always been a hard worker. I hate being defeated. Like, I have to figure stuff out. Like I'm really good at puzzles. So like it's like a puzzle. If it's not working, I got to figure out why, and I gotta keep going. That's kind of how I am. And I know what it's like to try to do everything I can do and still not get ahead. But then you get this opportunity dropped in your lap, and I just don't want to squander it because I know what it's like outside of this. I've never gotten jaded to the fact that the biggest fight that me and my wife ever had was over an 18 pack of macaroni and cheese because I got mad because it was $5.67 and we didn't have that much. Like, I don't talk about that a lot, but for Christmas, I got my wife a Porsche on the phone. And I didn't care how much, like, I didn't haggle. Like, somebody's like, oh, I could really haggle over the price. I was like, how much is it? They told me, I go, can you bring it tomorrow? Yes. Dude, that is, can't explain to you how amazing that was. Like, they open up the garage, there's a bow on it, and that's Dre's Christmas present, because she's a school teacher, teaches first grade. I used to watch the kids during the day. I would work at night. You know, we never had a night, and I don't care about cars. Cars, they don't mean anything to me. But to be able to do stuff like that and to look back and go, how did that happen? It wasn't because I was really smart. It wasn't because I made some amazing invention that the world needed. Dude, all I did was talk to old people about life insurance and then tell a bunch of my friends how great of an opportunity it was. And without Sean Mike putting this in place, like I don't have that. Like this, we get jaded to what success is. Like we get jaded to the amounts, to the money. And because people write these crazy amounts. I mean, if you get deposited what you wrote the last like 15 grand, like $15,000, I worked an entire year as an adult and didn't make $15,000. And that's embarrassing. I worked a whole year as an adult. Now I'm not 23. I'm older, so I guess things back then were cheaper. But when I think about that, that's what it is. I want people to respect and understand the opportunity that they have, and I never want to forget what it's like, and I never want to forget the euphoric feeling of getting the breakthroughs. And that's what happens at events like this. People get the breakthroughs. Like I just had Patrick tell a guy on the phone, listen, the problem that the insurance carriers have with the congestive heart failure is the heart failure part. And then the guy laughed. He goes, yeah, that's a good point. I mean, dude, where else you get to say cool stuff like that? Um, but but there's a breakthrough in that because so many of us are so worried about saying the wrong thing or what if I screw it up? Just be yourself. Let your personality be your personality. The person with the best personality on the phone is Adam. Adam has an incredible personality on the phone. I would buy anything from Adam if he called me on the phone because he's just cool. But he
Same.
hasn't he hasn't tried to be something he's not. He's just being himself and applying it to this. And for me, it's awesome. I love that part. Like I don't know what else I would do. I don't have anything else I could do. Like what am I going to do if I don't do this? So I don't know. Y'all got me out here eating too many carbs. This might be
Yeah.
crying in the backyard. Lord have
No,
mercy.
no, but to be honest, Trey, it's like you just like humanized yourself in like the best way. And what I mean by that is like, okay, like I led with why do you, Trey, care to do 25 lock-ins? And he's like, because I've been there, right? Like I've been the new agent. And I don't ever want to forget what it feels like to be the new agent. Because the day that we forget what it feels like to be the new agent is the day that everything stops working. Like you like guys, like this is what it's about. Like people just helping other people get better in at what they're doing. And it's like, just like Trey said, let your personality shine. Like I would also buy anything from Adam, by the way. So like, Adam, keep doing it because it's working, bro. Like,
Ronell got on a bus and rode the bus from Louisiana, and she's at like 6K, 5 or 6K, right? Like wanting something so bad that you're going to go to a house in the middle of Birmingham with people you never met in person to learn how to sell insurance better so you can make your situation better. Like who doesn't love that? It's like it's like that movie it's like that movie Moneyball. And it's like how do you not get romantic about baseball? You know, because it's the struggle. I just respect that so much, you know. I, Aphrodite's always the first one on my screen, but you know, Aphrodite has scraped and clawed and figured it out from like scratch and became like this amazing producer. And now she's going to build an amazing team. And I can see it because it's like a 30,000 foot view. Like I have everybody's story from the beginning. Like if somebody were to be like a documentarian of the FFL story, like if it's ever a documentary, like I'll be the voice of it because I paid attention to everything that happened to everybody and all the ups and downs and all the places where like Mark Mead should have quit. Really. Like y'all want to know the truth. Y'all think, look, there's situations where you go, how in the world did he overcome that? But just on the other side of it is always these great breakthroughs, and it turns into like this legendary status. But that's been happening since the beginning of time in the insurance business. One thing y'all should do, and I don't recommend books, but I recommend this book. There is a book on Amazon. It is called A Fortune to Share. It's by Vash Young. Everybody go buy that book. It was a book that was written about life insurance sales during the Great Depression. And when you read that book, you will say to yourself, because Vashon was like a struggling life insurance salesman that turned it around and became the number one selling person at his company and probably the number one selling life insurance agent in America during the Great Depression when everybody's standing in food lines. And when you read his perspective, it is like having a conversation with Sean White. It's absolutely unbelievable. It's almost word for word in some instances. It's kind of freaky. So y'all go get that book. That's okay. Good way to end it. Get that book. It's a good one.
I love it. And guys, it's like, this is what it's all about. Like, we are not on here saying, oh, we want to give back. We want to help people. Like, we want to help people get to the next level just to say it. It's like, no, like, we're out here taking action. Like, we're out here making it a better place. Like, we're out here trying to help. We're out here being our best selves as well. We're out here growing, like, for us and for everybody around us. Like, we all want to level up together. So, Trey, I can't thank you enough, first and foremost, for putting together the event here in Birmingham, for always being here for all of us, and just for being the person that you are and being willing to share stories. Because I think some of these stories, like, people can't relate back and think of Trey Honeycutt, what it looked like for you 5 years ago. And I think that you being able to do that, yourself is great, because not everybody can humble themselves enough to be able to do that. So Trey, I appreciate you more than I could ever express. Thank you for being on the call with us.